voice of growth, mastering the mind and market. Welcome to the Voice of Growth podcast, Mastering the Mind and Market. My name is Manny Teran, and I'm your host. Obstacles, problems, issues, fatigue, tiredness, all of these things are going to be there, and they're part of the human condition. Whether you're a student or a retiree or a young professional or a priest or a mechanic or whatever, these things are going to be there. These things are sewn into the fabric when you sign up to be alive. And oh my God, sometimes we feel as though these things are happening all day long for us. Let me give you an example of today. Wake up, first thing, watering my plants, hanging out. I get a text from my coach saying, ETA, ? I had to make some changes to my schedule this week, and I completely forgot that I didn't put my training in my calendar. Felt terrible about it. And from that point on, the rest of the morning was one thing after another. Left the house, forgot something, had to come back. On the way home to my office, all kinds of traffic, all kinds of madness, all that. Then I get to the office and there's the homeless guy that lives across the way, try to break into our place again. Broke the windows. Over and over and over and over, trying to get home on time. Should be about a 15-minute drive, was almost 30 because of the traffic. I don't even know what's happening. Then I get here and I'm trying to get this podcast in order. And it's one thing after the other, including breaking an expensive camera, tripping on a cord, and the camera coming undone from the tripod, which I don't even know how that could happen, but it did. The camera fell and the display broke off. I don't even know if that will be something that can be fixed. In that moment, the rage, the fire begins to bubble up. Having had lots of experience, wisdom, self-work, reflection, all these elements that I work on all the time, my antidote comes in. The first antidote, the first of these things that you should do when things like this happen to you, obstacles, breathe. Number one, breath work. In that moment, the first thing you do is you let out some steam. You breathe intentionally. There's a number of ways to do it. In this moment, all I could muster was a giant breath in, hold it for a few seconds, and a long breath out a couple of times. There's the 4-7-8 breathing. There's circular breathing. There's other techniques out there, but in the moment, all I could muster was that. I did it a few times. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you bring to attention the fact that the obstacle is the way. That Stoic phrase for me is almost like a mantra. When I am up against obstacles, I remember that the obstacle is the way. I'm going to read you some quotes from various Stoics. The first of which is Marcus Aurelius. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So what impedes you from taking the action that you're moving towards, you basically double down and you keep on going in that direction. Remember, Marcus Aurelius was an emperor. He had the world at his fingertips. Epictetus, however, was a slave, lived in squalor. And what he said is some things are in our control and some things are not. Well, what's in our control? The only thing in our control is our mindset, how we respond. That's it. Because in that moment, we could let that fire bubble up and God knows what'll happen. But when you breathe, when you remember the obstacle is the way, when you remember that Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality, it brings everything to a crystal clear position. You're on the right path. These obstacles are going to occur. They're going to hold you back. They're going to slow you down. After you breathe, after you remember that the obstacle is away, the third thing you do is you remember your vision. You remember what you were doing, what you are doing, what you're building, what you're creating. For me, dropping that camera, breathing, remembering that the obstacle is away. And then I said, this is just an obstacle. I've got bigger things to worry about. Is it going to hold me back a bit? Yes. Do I have the means to buy another camera? Yes, I do. Is it frustrating? Of course it is. But these things are going to occur. I'm not going to let that situation derail my mission. My mission is to deliver this message to you, my audience. My mission is to take the company that I run, that I'm a CEO at, and take it to higher and higher levels of success for my employees, for the family, for everyone in the community of this company. It's hard as hell, man, but I do it. I've done it and I continue to do it. Will I fall? Of course I will. There'll be moments when I don't breathe, when I do say something that I shouldn't say out loud. The fourth thing I do is after the intention of the vision, I get back up. And that get back up is emotion. It means I go back to do what I'm doing. I get back on that horse. This is where grit is born. That idea, that word grit, I love that word. Because it is when there is adversity, when there is obstacles, that is the part that sets you in motion and gets you across that threshold and ultimately across that finish line. And the last thing you do is you reflect. So after you get back up and get back on it, later on that evening, later on tonight, I will reflect on what happened. And I'll remember that this happened for me, that this is just another opportunity to build muscle, to build stoic muscle, to build this idea of this grit, to put on those gauntlets of perseverance and grit and go back at it. Life is amazing. It's wonderful, but it doesn't come without some pain and some bruising and some cuts, occasional broken bone, suffering. All these things are part of life. And I remember when these things hit me over and over and over in a day, I remember that this evening I will sleep. And if I wake, because no one is guaranteed tomorrow, if I wake, the sun will welcome me again to get back on that horse, to wash away and create an opportunity to flex that muscle and create. Moments like today, days like today, are going to be there for you. Sometimes they come weeks in a row. Sometimes they're there for a year or 2 or 3. But these things too shall pass. I had a moment during the later part of the company that I was running, that was my company, where the market had shifted. I had to lay everybody off, basically. I had a very small crew, and we're basically folding down the company. And I remembered this is about when my Stoicism journey really took hold. I just didn't know it. Because I was sitting there in my office, this beautiful office, had this massive desk, granite. It was just beautiful. And I remembered this corner office I had. And I was sat in silence, and I remembered that My worst day in the company is millions of people's best day. People that can't see, people that can't walk, people that, for whatever reason, cannot reach the same place that I had reached, even though the verbiage I would have said and at the time was that it came crashing down. The verbiage I say now is that I ended one chapter to begin another. We can get wrapped up in that victim mentality. We could feed into it. We could walk around and pout. But what does it serve? Zero. It doesn't serve you or anyone at all. Every once in a while, we think that, it's okay, I'll just wallow in it for a bit. No, not even every once in a while. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen because you fall into it. But remember to get back up. Remember those steps. Remember to breathe. Remember to remind yourself that the obstacle is away. Remember to set your intention on your vision again. What are you creating? What is the bigger picture here? Remember to get back up and push ahead. And remember to reflect. Elements like what I'm sharing with you are sometimes hard to do in the moment. So I practice these things. I think about these things during the day. As I'm driving, there's plenty of opportunity for you to do these things as you're driving to work, or as little things that you were curating fall to the ground and get smashed. There's lots of opportunities, and we get to do these things. Success is your duty. You're brought into this world to create meaning for yourself. You're brought into this world to lead. This podcast is about mastering the mind and the market. One of the early incarnations of that phrase was mastering the mind so that you can master the market. But we realized that it wasn't necessarily a one then the other sequential process. It was a parallel process. Whereas you work on your mindset as you work on mastering the market. We're getting some momentum in this podcast. So I'm asking you to like, subscribe, be part of the conversation, give some comments in there. We're getting some momentum. We're building because this message is becoming clearer today than it's ever been for me of why I do this. I do this because I am sharing with you elements that are going to be even more important as the AI world takes hold more and more and more. I gave a talk today at a marketing class at the university, and I had the opportunity to speak with some of the brightest minds that we have in this beautiful city. And it gave me hope. It gave me hope. Hope is a word that I don't like very much. In the past, I used to push that word away because hope is, in my thinking at the time, an element where you don't have any control. Sound familiar? What did I just talk about? What's the only thing we can control? Is our mindset. We can't control that bum crossing the road or the homeless guy, crossing the road. We can't control the pothole that pops our tire or somebody keying our car. We can't control those things. But we can control how we respond. And hope is that word that sort of straddles the line because I'm a man of action. I like to get to it and get things done to the chagrin of sometimes people around me because I just do it. I'm like a bull. I push ahead. Sometimes to the detriment of those around me because I'm very, very stubborn. That's for another podcast, by the way. But the idea here is with hope. Hope is something that I've learned deserves a special place in my own mindset. because hope is, in a way, a pause, a realization that good things are on their way, that I love to see the brighter things in life. Had a wonderful conversation with Dan Maris, who you'll see soon in a podcast next week. And man, that was impactful. That man has a lot to share. And this is why I love doing this podcast. I get to meet these people that are at the apex of their game. They're apex predators, but they also have an element of humility. They're able to reflect. They're able to spend time with me and share elements that we don't always see from the public eye. And it's a reminder that they too have dreams. They too have hopes. They too have obstacles. They too have challenges. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. And remember that the entire universe conspired for you to be at this moment, at this very moment, listening to this podcast. For you to take a nugget of wisdom for yourself or for a loved one or for a stranger saying, hey, I heard this podcast, XYZ. Sometimes we need that. We need a little bit of encouragement. As the world becomes even more complex and more distant from one another, and in some ways harder to understand, but in some ways, going back to the fundamentals, easier to understand. I lean on those fundamentals. Go back to the podcast a week ago about being human. Look at that. Look at the elements of compassion, of integrity. All those elements are what draws us closer to each other and to ourselves. My last point for today has to do with that. Has to do with compassion. That homeless guy that's trying to break into our building. Broke the window 2 weeks ago, broke it again last night. I look at his life and I am compassionate. Don't get me wrong, I believe in justice. If there's a cop that comes by, and by the way, we called the cops on already, nothing happened. Cop comes by, he's there, I'm going to make sure that they meet. But I can still do it with compassion. They're not mutually exclusive. And that is exactly what I'm going to talk to you about in my final point, but inward. Give yourself compassion. And there it is. The SD card I believed was completely empty was obviously not. Ran out of time. Getting back on the horse. Took my deep breath. Remembered that the obstacle is the way. Reset my intention of what I'm doing here, the grand vision. Got back up, got back at it. And I reflect later on what these things will teach me. As I was saying, showing compassion and justice, turning inward and showing ourselves compassion in light of strong judgment of ourselves. As entrepreneurs, as hard drivers, as people who create and want to make things happen, we are oftentimes the hardest on ourselves. These things happen and we blame ourselves. Me dropping that camera and tripping on something, it shouldn't have happened. And I can sit there and I can blame myself over and over again. Oh, I should have done this. I could beat myself up. Or I can go through that framework and be absolved from that, knowing full well that I can only control my response. It is what it is. Giving myself compassion in light of that strong judgment is a supernatural activity. It's hard to do. You can practice it with other people. You can practice being compassionate, but look in that mirror sometimes as well. Look in that mirror at your own pupils, at your own eyes, and speak to yourself. Forgive yourself. Understand you're doing the best you can, and that tomorrow you'll get to do it again, God willing. If you wake up tomorrow, you love your fate, you lock and load, and you do it again. That's what separates those who do and those who only say they do. It's oftentimes a very wide valley. And I'm blessed to have this opportunity to come with you on this journey and to explore these topics with you, because for me, they have been game-changing. They have been something that has opened my eyes to a different way of living that incidentally can exist within religion. It can exist within other philosophies. This is core. This goes down to almost the fundamental, the mitochondrial level of who you are, to practice and make that stoic muscle strong. There's obstacles, that fatigue that steps in. And by the way, the fatigue aspect, you take those 5 elements I mentioned before, you add one more. As you reflect or after you reflect, you rest, you breathe, you go through all that process, and then you rest. There's nothing wrong with rest. When that sun comes up the next day, you get back on that horse and you make it happen. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. Share it with people that you believe will take value from it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Cheers.